Greetings. Well, this video is going to show how I'm going to recover this bowl. This bowl was dropped in the gallery and suffered some damage, and it's going to require that I remove this top ring and replace it. The damage you can see here, I hope. This lip right here has been crushed and splintered away. Some of the splintering is here. And if that's not enough to convince you that I have to pull the ring off, perhaps this will. As you can see, it was broken right off. The glue joint held, the wood itself actually came off. So now I'm going to have to put this on the lathe and build a ring and then turn it to blend. It's going to be a bit of a challenge, unlike turning a full bowl. You can see that the wall thickness is kind of thin here. It goes down to maybe 3/16 of an inch, maybe an eighth. So as a consequence, I'm not going to have all that thickness, that stable beef, if you will, to hold this stable while I turn the shape. That means I'm going to have to get very careful with what I do, how I lay this up. And the first step is going to be to mount this on the faceplate on a waste block. And I've chosen this one here. It's one I've used before. I'm just going to face this off, and I'm going to build a pocket to accept the geometry of the foot that exists right now. In that way, once it's on there, know that I'm turning exactly true to the center of the lathe, because I can't allow any run out to occur. As you can imagine, with that thin wall thickness, I can't afford to give up any. So that's going to be step one, and let's go to the lathe and we'll start to put that together, and I'll point out some of the details that I'm going to put in place to make sure this hopefully comes out right. Well, we're back to the next step in the recovery of this bowl. First, I want to show you that what I've done is scuffed up this surface. This foot has a nice little ring that I made that's fairly deep, and we're going to use that to register this bowl onto our waste block that's on the faceplate. If you recall, last time I said I was going to use a different faceplate, much smaller. I've decided to use this bigger one, which gives me this bigger surface area, and we're going to get into that later as to why I did that. It all involves how we're going to dampen the vibrations when we do our turning after we build this back up. As I mentioned before, this is a very thin wall, so we don't have a lot of room for run out on this. Run out would be like if the bowl's turning like this, exaggerated of course. So I'm going to locate it on the faceplate by using this ring, which I know is perfectly on center with the rest of the bowl because that's how it was made. And what I've got here is a waste block that I had previously defined to use for something else. Right now what I'm going to do is surface this off and then develop the pocket that's going to engage this ring, and you'll see how that goes as we move along. So let me pull you in here, and we're going to get started. Turn the lathe on, of course. And I'm just going to face this off first, just to define the perfect surface that we're going to put the rig into. That's good enough for that. Now I have to, using a pencil, First I'm going to position this where it looks pretty good to my eye. I'm just going to take a first guess right there. Sorry I don't have a good angle for you to see this, but so let me see if I can move you around so you can better see what I'm doing. Yeah, that's a little better. I think you can get a better idea of what I'm doing now. So now I'm going to get this tool here, which has these bits in. I make this tool and sell the hardware. I think you already know that, but if you don't, you just found out. Anyway, as you can see, this bit has a nice round to it, and we're going to start with this to define the geometry that the bowl is going to engage with. So let's do that. That's just a test to see how well it's going to engage with this, how close I am to the diameter, and I'm a bit big. So now I can start pulling it in. I think I'm going to change to a different tool here. This is a smaller version of that one. And I'm going to take the bit out and put this rounded bit in. These bits are 1/8 of an inch. So it gives me extreme detail control. And hopefully I'll be able to do that. So let's give this a shot. Now I know I'm too big, so that gives me a target to work from, and this tool is smaller, so I have to raise up the tool rest a bit. And since I'm trying to match the geometry though, that's got me positioned. So it's starting to get there. But I want to give the glue more surface area to work with. So I'm going to keep shaping this in. And I'll come back, but I want to point out something else. You see this ring, or the top lip, that's what we want to cut off. I haven't cut it off yet. The reason being that I want to cut that off with a thin blade saw, and it's far easier to handle this whole thing while I'm trying to do that if I have it glued to this faceplate, because now that way there I can use this lathe to help hold this steady while I do the sawing. So when I come to that point, you'll see, but that's why I haven't cut this off yet, and I'm not going to until I get this defined. I think this is as good as I'm going to get it. It pockets it in there very nicely, and now I think it's running about as true as it's going to get. So the next step is I'm going to take this off the lathe, set it up on my bench, and simply glue this in place. And once we do that, we'll be ready for the next step. Well, the glue has dried, and as I said before, I was going to tell you why I went with that larger faceplate, and this is it. You see, I've got some foam wrapped tightly here against the outer surface of the bowl. That's largely because, as I mentioned before, this is a very thin wall. So I'm going to try to use this as a means to dampen it as I go through the next process. The next process, of course, is going to be, I'm going to cut this ring off, and I'm going to use a coping saw, which we're going to get into next. And while I'm doing that, I'll probably get an impression on if this foam is really going to work or not, because after I cut the ring off, then I'm going to actually turn this surface true and flat so that I can glue on the replacement ring. So let's move along. Okay, well, here's my coping saw, and I'm going to just pretty much try to track along the break point between this ring and the body of the bowl. Now, the body of the bowl is made of zebra wood, and if you've worked with it yourself, you know that it's not the strongest wood out there, so I'm going to have to be fairly careful. Okay, well, we've taken the ring off, and it's an ugly edge, but that's fine because I'm going to turn it next. Let's turn it. Let's see if we can turn that edge nice and clean. Well, this might be the first significant challenge because this is a thin rim, and we'll just have to see if we can do our best. Well, I think that's about it. And as you could tell, it did not seem to screech or howl too much, so maybe this foam is going to do what I hope I intended it to do. Now, let me show you. Here is the ring that's going to be put on here. You can see it's another segmented ring, and I'm just going to glue that on, and then the real challenge is going to turn this down and blend it in and hopefully recover this thing. You can see I've built it out of segments, and I've routed the inside and the outside off. The attempt being that, you know yourself, if you have those flats, the uninterrupted cuts are going to be impacts effectively going into this, and I wanted to try to minimize that. So let me glue this on next, and we'll continue this process. Now we're ready to start turning. You see that the ring is glued onto the body of the bowl that was left after we cut the damaged top ring off. And that's what we're replacing with this curly cherry. Now it's the moment of truth to see if I can turn this down and make a nice rim on it while resting on that 3/16 thick zebra wood ball. So let's fire it up. I think it's fairly obvious that this is going to take a while because I got to go slow. But we'll just keep going and I'll get back with you. toweling now because it's getting thinner. Good to stop and check. Sort of coming in. Pretty good. This is where you find out that it was not perfectly round. But hopefully we'll still have enough to work with. I think I have to go on the back side now and try and get this blend proper, which might be the worst one. Because on this, I have to use that just might be it. I'm going to work out a little bit more with sandpaper, I think, and we'll get back with you and show you how it come out. Well, relative success right now, for the moment at least. I think it's come out pretty good. You see that the rim more or less looks like it belongs there, which was of course the objective. The blend is reasonably good. And just see, I might have to sand a little bit more on the outside here, but overall I'm feeling pretty good about this. Now I'm going to put a couple coats of finish on here before I cut it off and attempt to reestablish the foot. And the only concern, or one of the concerns about that, is that I'll be doing minor interrupted cuts while driving through this thin wall, which is always an area of concern, but we'll do our best. So stay tuned. Well, I've got a couple coats of finish on this, and the next step is going to be to take this off the waste block, and I'll do that on the bandsaw. But before I do that, there's another thing I want to do, and that is to turn some of this down. There was a small mark on here from the fall. Can't find it right now. It might even be under the glue. But the point is that I want to take this waste block out of the way quite a bit and define this slope, or this angle down to the foot while it's on the waste block, because anytime you sand something like this has been sanded, you're a little bit out of round. I don't want to suspend it on just this thin rim to turn that, because then I've got an interrupted cut on the side, and that's the worst case scenario for a potential catch or even partial catch that might put so much stress on this that it'll crack it. So I want to try to bring this down and get a lot of the outside shaping done, so then all I have to do on the foot when I have it suspended on this rim is to just make a little pocket in there and finish it off. So let's fire this up, and I'll hopefully you can see well enough the results, but I can't really show you my tool in use because there's no way I can set the camera up. Okay, I think that's pretty close to what I want. Now I'm going to part this off on the bandsaw, but I think before I do that, I will do some serious sanding to get the blend right. And when you're doing work like this, it might be kind of disheartening, because this is nicely finished in this area, but that's too bad. It's got to get roughed up so I can get this blend in here with some nice coarse sandpaper before I cut it off of the waste block. So I'll go ahead and do that, and then we'll come back to that cut off on the bandsaw. Well, after much sanding, I got this ready to cut off. I've got it set up already. You can see I'm holding the faceplate with a vise. I've got it on a little riser block to give me clearance for the bowl. And if I line it up, I'll just be able to slice this right off with the bandsaw. So let me pull you in a little bit. And nothing too magical about this, just the bandsaw cut. See that the remnants of the original foot is still there. In fact, the name and everything is there. So now I'm going to put this on my cold jaws, and we're going to turn the new foot. Well, for the last event, I guess you could call it, I'm going to clean up this foot. And hopefully that'll go smoothly. I've got it on the cold jaws with the grippers. You see I've got just about zero run out there, so hopefully things will go smoothly. I think I'm pretty much close enough to where I'm going to sand this and finish up the bottom. But overall, I think that's about that. I'll close this video out with the final video showing the finished piece. Here's the final result. This is the bowl after all the finish is on it. It's completely done and ready for the new owner. You can see that I thought, since the original bowl was called Defining Moment, in keeping with the techno age, this should be Defining Moment 2.0, because it is kind of a reboot, if you will, of the original piece. And again, to remind you, this is the remnants of the ring that was removed from the top. And it's at least as good as the original bowl, if not maybe a little better. I like the cherry ring on top now. It really goes well with that zebra wood. So in closing, I wanted to make this video, as I did this piece, to inspire others that, hey, if you encounter an event like this with one of yours and you think, well, it's trash, maybe it's not. If it's already broken, there's no loss in the attempt. And when it comes out like this, you're going to feel pretty good about it. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you again soon.